Welcome to You Make the Difference. I'm Wanda Walker, and today we're talking to Danae Muncie. Danae is with Feeding the Valley, and we're so glad to have Feeding the Valley in LaGrange.
Thank you so much, Ms. Wanda. We're actually very thrilled to be here.
Yes. Now tell us, what is Feeding the Valley Food Bank? Tell us about that, its history, and how many you serve.
Well, Feeding the Valley actually started in 1983 in our Columbus area. And we actually opened our LaGrange office warehouse here in March of 2014. So we're coming up on our first birthday. But we actually service 14 different counties. LaGrange actually covers the 4 northern counties, which are Meriwether, Harris, Talbot, and of course Troup County.
Okay, and Feeding the Valley Food Bank, that's a big deal, isn't it? I mean, y'all give out a lot of food. How much food do y'all give out in a year?
In a year, well, actually, we just learned that the numbers for Troup County alone in our surrounding area, we've given out 1 million pounds of food thus far for this year. Yes, ma'am.
That is amazing. Okay, you belong to Feeding America Network of Food Banks. Tell me about that.
We do. Feeding America is actually a national company which houses about 200 food banks throughout the United States. And through them and their partners, it allows us to continue to grow food bank areas as well as pantries in our state.
Yes. Now tell me, who can come and get food from Feeding the Valley? Tell me how that works.
Well, Feeding the Valley works with the agencies. Agencies are recognized as 501c3 entities, or either they're recognized as a church. They meet a certain criteria, and those are the individuals who actually come to us and have the ability to shop. At 19 cents a pound is what we do. We distribute food at either 19 cents or either 10 cents a pound inside the agency. And those foods are then taken by the agencies and boxed up and distributed to those who are recognized with a food insecurity.
Yes. So people don't come like to the Feeding the Valley. It's the churches and it's nonprofit organizations who come and get the food and then they distribute it.
That's correct. We actually are not what people think. We're not the food pantry. We do work with the food pantries by giving and donating the foods to them, but unfortunately, we're not the food pantry itself. So a lot of times we'll get individuals who will come and think that we are, but what we do then is we redirect them to actual agencies in their neighborhoods who could probably help them with their need.
Okay, and Feeding the Valley is located at?
We're at 118 Gordon Commercial Drive, which is in between Ring Forklift and, of course, Explorations and Antiquity.
Yes, and it's a big warehouse, and the organizations are able to buy food for 19 cents a pound, and you have food that's fresh.
We do.
And also other foods. You have meats, is that right?
That's correct.
And all of those things go for 19 cents a pound, is that correct?
Correct. It's either 19 cents and usually water or drinks, things like that, are 10 cents a pound, yes. Okay. And the warehouse itself, we house, it's 24,000 square feet, and then we have 2 mobile semi-tractor trailer trucks that are refrigerated and frozen where we keep our produce, our breads, our sweets, and then of course the meat product is there for them to shop. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, now you get food given to you by corporate agencies, is that right? How much do you depend on corporate agencies to donate food to you?
Well, actually, we would be lost with our corporate sponsors. We have some tremendous sponsorship here just in our Troup County area. We work with Walmart, with the Farmers Market. We have Publix, Kroger, and we just added in today's new opening, which is the Walmart Neighborhood Market as well. And working in conjunction with these partnerships, we actually were able to distribute about 7 million pounds of food in the last fiscal year. And of that 7 million pounds, 3 million of that came from our national sponsors.
Yes. So other people give you food, is that correct? Or is it mostly corporate?
It is corporate, but we also work with national and local growers as well, to be able to receive in some of the fresher produces.
Okay. How big is the hunger problem in America today?
Well, on a global side, I mean, if you look at statistics in just Troup County alone, we'll say, in Troup County alone, it's 20% of the population is recognized to be in poverty, which means it's 1 in 6 adults or either 1 in 4 children generally will have a day or a meal that they're missing, or even an entire day that they're going without food.
Wow. And do you see that increasing or decreasing?
Unfortunately, it is increasing. As the need goes on, unfortunately, you find that with the economic structure the way that it is, individuals that no longer have the ability to feed their families as they did. Sometimes people have the misgiving that because you live in a nice house or you drive a nice car that you don't have a food insecurity, and that's not correct. A lot of times what happens is today with the structure, individuals who live in those nice houses or drive the nice car, they may be making trade-offs, as we call it, which maybe they're trying to make a decision: do I pay my electric bill this month, or do I miss a couple of meals, or do I not buy those healthier, nutritious foods that I normally would do so that I can pay my mortgage payment?
Yes. And I've noticed that too, that sometimes you just can't tell. You can't tell whether people have overextended themselves or whether they are financially secure just by looking at what they have. Now, let's talk about food insecurity. What is food insecurity?
Well, I mean, food insecurity itself basically means that one no longer has the ability to choose or to purchase the healthy, nutritious foods that they once did. It could be because of maybe you've lost your job, or maybe medically you've been disabled. A lot of times that's what happens, is that people who were once productive in society, they fall lower on the poverty scale due to those things, inexplicable things that happen in life sometimes, changes in life.
Yes, and you submitted a question to me that I'm going to ask you. Have you ever had a food insecurity?
I have. I think if everybody is very honest with themselves, they could honestly say that at some point in time in their life, they probably have had a food insecurity. I know growing up, I grew up in a household that had my grandmother, my aunt, my mom, and we had 9+ children that were there. Due to an accident where one of the mothers had passed away back in the 60s, of course, children would become wards of the state. So my grandmother took it upon herself to bring everyone into her home. And even though we as children didn't understand that we were lower income or poverty level, we had our own garden, and my cousin Ricky worked for the Winn-Dixie store, and he started off as a bag boy. But back then, it was the same thing it is today, where our sponsorship, they recognized that our family was growing and had a need. So Winn-Dixie took it upon themselves to donate to us.
Yes.
And give us the food that might be a day old or going out of expiration date. So I think we all have that. And I know even for myself as a single mom, I remember one time at Thanksgiving, I didn't have what would be traditionally known as a Thanksgiving meal.
Yes.
And there came a knock on my door, and there was a gentleman who was there, and he was this big gentleman, and I was like, he had this box of food, and I thought, well, I don't need any charity. But unfortunately, he was like, well, don't let pride stand in your way of feeding your children, which, that really hit home, because it's what I was doing, was being quite stubborn. But from that point on, I made it a point to myself to make a mental note that when I was able for myself, I would take it upon myself to go out. And in the next years, I would find 1 or 2 families. And to this day, I still do that every year. I still go out and do those things. And working with Feeding the Valley gives me on a larger scale, if you would, to help people every day. So.
Wow. And I'm sure that influenced what you do today, really.
It does.
Yeah.
It actually is. It's a very humbling experience when you can put a face to poverty, and when you can go out and actually see the people that are struggling with a food insecurity, and they are your neighbors, and they are yourself.
Yes.
We all have that at some point in our time where we're struggling.
Yes. Now, you have a childhood hunger program, right?
We do.
Through Feeding the Valley. Tell me about that.
Well, we actually have a couple.
Okay.
The first one is our hot meal program, which is known as the Kids Menu program. And the Kids Menu program, we usually do about 900 meals or over 900 meals daily. And those go to children who are recognized to probably not even be able to have a hot meal that day. And then during times when school is out or during the summer months, we actually feed over 1,500 children daily with a hot meal. So those are individuals that, like I said, they may not go home and have the ability to have a hot meal for that day. So Feeding the Valley takes it upon themselves to go out and to distribute those things to recognized areas with children. And then we also have our Buddy Pack program.
Yes.
And the Buddy Pack program is a program that I think everybody enjoys and loves because no one ever wants to think of a child being hungry. And what we do is our agencies, our churches and organizations partner with a school system. And in that school system, the counselors have recognized children that would be in need. And what they do then is they take a backpack and the volunteers get together and they pack the backpack with healthy, nutritious foods, which are kid-friendly foods, meaning
Yes.
they can go in a microwave or they're pop-top so that children can get into with easy accessibility. And then they are given to them on the day of their last day of school. It could be a Thursday, it could be a Friday, and then that food is what will tide them over through the weekend.
Yes, and you were telling me that there are churches in our area that have partnered with schools, and I call it adopted the schools, and they provide what's needed for the book bags, and actually they come to Feeding the Valley and secure the food, and then volunteers pack those book bags and then take those to the school for distribution. Is that correct?
That is correct, and that's one of the greatest things is partnering with a school system that's been recognized to have children, because every school has a child that is in need and can be recognized. And the agencies do come to us and they purchase the kid-friendly foods and take those out, as I said, and put them in the backpack, and then the kids usually return them on Mondays, and then of course again on Friday they would be giving it back. But we also have our mobile pantry unit as well. In the mobile pantry, even though we have agencies in all of our counties, there are still individuals that are homebound possibly who can't get out and come to the food bank or to those agencies. And so what we do is we partner with the enrichment personnel in those local counties, and the enrichment personnel have recognized through different questions and answers people who would have a food insecurity and a need for who are hungry. And what we do then is we have volunteers in Columbus that come in and they pack usually between 30 to 50 pound boxes of food, and that food is then put onto our mobile units, and our mobile units then go out to that recognized area, and working with the enrichment personnel, we actually team with them and meet them at a certain day and a time that's designated, and then the enrichment personnel give out the food themselves to those that they've already recognized with who've met that criteria of need.
Now, so a box of 30 to 50 pounds, how long would that last? Is that a month's supply, or is that?
It is, well, I guess it would depend on how you eat and
Right.
how you make your meals. Generally, we're not there to give you monthly meals or to carry you by the month. We're more of a supplemental. We try and supplement what you may have already had in your pantry. And if not, then of course people become very frugal in the ways that they do. There are some great resources and things that we're working on with Feeding the Valley with some of our partner groups, and we're trying to come up with a cookbook that will allow us to give those through partnership and grants to our agencies to distribute to those families, which will show them how to eat and prepare a meal for a family of 6 under $4.99 a day.
Yes, and then also probably it will help them know how to stretch a meal, right?
Correct. I think everyone becomes frugal. I mean, you can easily take crushed tomatoes and make it a tomato sauce, but then you could also use it later on onto doing different things with meatloafs or different things. So you become very creative and very constructive with the foods.
Yes, and so are you a governmental program, or how are you funded, or those kinds of, or even regulated?
Well, I mean, we are federally and state regulated. We are mandated by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which is the USDA. We also work with the state of Georgia, and with them also comes the health department.
Yes.
And then, believe it or not, we actually have Homeland Security as well because of our vehicle fleet. So we actually have quite a few agencies that we have to answer to our own self and have a protocol that has to be met and must be met to remain open.
Okay, so you're providing food to thousands in Troup County and the surrounding counties, right? So tell me, what's your role in providing nutritious and healthy meals?
Well, we wish that we could say that Feeding the Valley can direct agencies, will say, to choosing healthy, nutritious foods. What happens is we don't dictate what our agencies purchase. we do try and restructure them to have a better understanding that healthier, nutritious foods can go sometimes a lot further than some of the sweeter snack
Yes.
foods can. So even though we partner with them and try and direct them, it's still always up to the agency what it is that they would like to purchase and distribute to those that have a food insecurity need.
Okay, and so sometimes food banks are struggling, aren't they?
They do.
So is it possible for struggling food banks and pantries to be innovative in terms of providing healthier foods and survive at the same time?
Well, I think that we can. I mean, first and foremost is to be able to find more food, and not just finding more food, but to be able to find healthier foods for our
Yes.
low-income families. That I think is one of the biggest things. And we do work closely with our local and our national growers. And with that, a lot of people aren't familiar, but there's about 6 billion pounds of food, of produce, that is tilled under every year. So that's why it's important for us to work with our local growers and farmers, because all of those foods, fruits and produce as well, are things that could be used to be distributed out to those that are still in a food insecurity and having a hunger need.
Would you say that again?
There's 6 billion pounds of food that is actually tilled under, meaning it's just compost, if you will.
Yes.
And that's why it's imperative with Feeding America and Feeding the Valley to work with national and local growers. So instead of the food being tilled under, that food could be donated out to our sources. So in return, it could be going to millions that are hungry.
Yes. I'd like to ask you, do you know why it's being tilled under?
I do not. I think a lot of it is choice, is that we haven't reached out far enough, if you will. We
Yes.
haven't communicated that individuals really do have the need. A lot of times it's a not in my backyard problem.
Yes.
If you don't see it, you don't recognize it, then it really doesn't exist. I know that everyone globally has an awareness that people are hungry, and states and counties are hungry. But a lot of times with the growers, et cetera, it's just that they haven't been asked, if you will. So
Yes.
that's why our communication levels have increased, and we're opening it up to being able to speak to them, to deter them from doing that. Instead of adding it to compost, is to donate it.
Yes, definitely. Okay, now people who are working in feeding the hungry organizations, I'm sure that they sometimes have fatigue. Talk about donor fatigue.
Well, I don't know if it's really donor fatigue. I wouldn't call it that. I think that there's millions of donors that don't really understand, if you will, that the need of individuals. It's like I was telling you earlier, there's 1 in 6 adults
Yes.
who go without food, and there's 1 in 4 children. So I just think that it's not really fatigue. I just think that it's just not a clear understanding, if you would.
Okay. All right. And then tell me what you're doing to broaden your influence in this area.
Well, the very first thing, of course, is that we have some fabulous donors in our national and our corporate level. And as I mentioned earlier, too, I mean, we are partners here in Troup County alone with Farmers Market.
Yes.
We have Publix, we have Kroger, we have Walmart Distribution, and again, today, who's opening, which is our Walmart Neighborhood Market. So we partner with all of them. And each day, it just continues to grow. It amazes me at how much food is actually donated to Feeding the Valley through this corporate sponsorship.
Yes. And you were telling me earlier, before we started the interview, about Walmart distribution here and the important part they play in Troup County. Tell me about that.
Well, Walmart Distribution is, as we know, I mean, this is the southern hub. There's 2 of them, but of course we were lucky enough to have it here in Troup County. And I'll just give you a for instance.
Okay.
In Thanksgiving, Walmart gives out turkeys and fixings, if you will, to their employees. Well, this year they actually had, I believe it was 108 turkeys and fixing that were left over. So through some other organization partnerships, they recommended that they contact us, which they did. And we were able to, at Christmas time, put together a little program where Santa Claus came, and Walmart Distribution General Manager Tracy came, and the asset protection team came, so that they could actually see where the food that they had given to us were actually going to be distributed out that day. And it was kind of neat because Santa Claus was helping pack up the cars and load everything up. So it was an eye-opening experience and a humbling experience because Walmart gets to see where it's going to, in other
Right.
words, and talk to the people.
Yes, and also that they have designated that their contributions will affect the people who live in Troup County. It will stay in Troup County. Is that correct?
It is one of the things that they were questioning, and they did ask us about, and that was one of the things that we shared with them, is that Walmart has a concern that the food that they're donating might possibly be going to individuals that are employees of their own or through their stores. So it was imperative for them that the food remain here in our surrounding counties of the northern counties to be able to help, which is certainly what we will be doing to honor
Their request.
Of course.
Yes. Now tell me, do you think there's a new paradigm emerging to spread the sense of interdependence and responsibility, that we're one human family and it's promoting acts of kindness and generosity toward other people?
I do. I mean, I feel that this is exactly what the world needs and what the world understands. I've always been a firm believer that, it only takes one person to change the life of another. And then I always, usually when I make a statement like that, I always ask the person, are you going to be that person? Could
Yes.
you be the person to help change the life of another?
Yes, we can.
Absolutely.
We can make a difference, can't we?
We can, and we must make a difference because,
Yes.
the goal of Feeding America as well as Feeding the Valley is to one day to end hunger, for us to not have jobs, as sad as that is, but that would be a blessing and a greatness, is to no longer have hunger in this world.
Yes. And then also, can you just reiterate the statistics for Georgia and Troup County?
I can. I'll look down real quick for that.
Okay.
There's actually 43 million people who were in 2013 recognized to be in poverty in the state of Georgia. And those are the ages of 18 to 64 in the age groups. There are 18.9% of the people living in Georgia as adults that are recognized to be food insecure. And also there's 28% that are children, which again comes down to being 1 in 4 children are going without food. Now, in Troup County alone, it is 20%. And 20% of that means of our 67,000 people who reside here in Troup County, a little over 13,000 are actually food insecure.
Wow.
So there is a need for it, and as I was saying earlier, it is a must. It's a must, an imperative that we get out and get more agencies and have them recognize that, you may not think that you have the funds to be able to do it, but as I said earlier to you, I guarantee you probably have 19 cents in your pocket, and that 19 cents buys a pound of food.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's why I always tell them, it doesn't cost a lot. I mean, you can start with one shelf. You may have just 5 people, and those 5 people may be people inside of your own church that are struggling.
Yes. And, we were talking earlier about how you could take an offering at church and just say, empty your change, and that change could buy a lot at the food pantry, couldn't it?
It truly can. I understand, that 10% is what we tithe, and it's what the Bible has asked us to do, and those are all blessings because it's how the churches and stay open. But at the same time, I always say, if you took like a Tootsie Roll container from Christmas that was a little piggy bank that you used to get as a kid, if you passed that around and just asked individuals in your community and your flock to reach in their pockets, and women in the bottom of our purses,
Yes.
and just put your loose change, you would be amazed at how much loose change and what that loose change would actually buy in the long run for those who are suffering from poverty and in food insecurity.
Yes, because if you had, say, $100, what would that do at the food bank?
Well, $100, we'll just say $150. If
Okay.
you did $150, that would give you about a little over 1,000 pounds of food.
Wow.
So 1,000 pounds of food divided out into 50-pound boxes. I mean, you're looking at hundreds of individuals that you'll be able to feed, and that would supplement them for a few weeks.
Right. And another thing that I want to mention is that there are churches who have adopted the schools, and say, for instance, Rosemont Church adopted Rosemont School. And so Rosemont has committed to provide food for children through that book bag program.
Right.
And so that's what we'd like to see all the churches who have adopted a school do. Is that correct?
Absolutely. In Troup County alone, I believe we have 22 schools, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
It's 22 schools. And of that, I believe we do probably 4 or 5 right now that have our Buddy Pack program, which still leaves us the opportunity of adopting, if you will, 18 plus more schools.
Yes.
So that's why as the agencies learn what they're doing and how they're doing it, and they get into their groove, if you will, what they then do is we approach them about joining into the Buddy Pack program. Or either joining into a kids meal program if you have like an industrial kitchen and have the capability to go out and do something of the sort, as we do in Columbus.
Yes. Okay, now tell us how the general public can help.
Well, there's several ways. The first thing as a key is volunteerism, which is one of the biggest things that we have. There's no volunteer who can volunteer that we would turn away, because there's always something to do. We put together boxes that are our food boxes that we were talking about to go out in mobile pantry.
Yes.
We also pack free boxes that are given to agencies at a limit, but those are things that they could be doing. You could always sweep the floor. Then, of course, there is those who do the monetary donations. And the monetary donations could either be sent to us, and or it could be sent to our Columbus office on Coca-Cola Boulevard in Columbus. So I mean, there's so many ways that you can do and to outreach to us, you know, and to help. A lot of times people will ask the question of, well, will my money stay here? Well, if that's what you wish for it to do, then we will most certainly try and abide by what it is that you're asking us to do with your funds of donation.
Yes, and this is such a wonderful service. I just love it. And evidently there is a great, great need, because you've come here. I know you saw the need, and that's what brought the branch office up from Columbus to LaGrange. And so, and I just appreciate the different groups also who have embraced the food bank and who are going there and getting the food and distributing it. And I know Baptist Tabernacle, I saw in the newspaper where they spend $1,800 a month at the food bank getting food so that they can distribute it to children and to elderly people and other people in the community that need food. And so I would just like to say thank you for all that y'all are doing, and also encourage you, if you would like to volunteer at Feeding the Valley, to get in touch with Danae, and they're located again on
It's on Gordon Commercial Drive.
Commercial Drive, that's right. And thank you for watching You Make the Difference, because you truly do. We'll see you next week.
Got a promise from heaven. It's a year of replevin. Got a promise from heaven. It's all coming back. Everything Satan